Child's Play 3, the novelization of the film by Matthew J. Costello. Chapter 14. Incredibly enough, Andy watched everyone drift to their classes. A military school could not come to a stop just because someone died. Forward, men, and don't forget your notebooks. Andy went to his history class. He sat near the back, looking out the window, not really listening to the teacher, a woman, drone on. He kept thinking about things. Disconnected things, disturbing things. Cochran with the doll, the garbage man crushed to death. He must have been drunk, Whitehurst had said. Andy nodded. The teacher, Sergeant Fraser, looked like an emaciated owl. Her hair pulled back tight, her body all bones. She carried a pointer. Napoleon waged an assault, unprecedented in the history of Europe, unprecedented in its scope, its ambition. Andy looked out the window, at the afternoon sky darkening. I think I have to get out of here. But as we've seen, his campaign was destined to end at Waterloo. Fraser took a step closer to Andy, pointer at the ready. Can you tell us why, Mr. Barclay? Andy heard his name and snapped around. Sergeant Fraser had him fixed with her beady little eyes, ready to pounce. Andy licked his lips. The other cadets looked over at him. Most did nothing to hide their smiles. What was the question? Laughter. The crowd in the arena was glad that someone else faced the hungry lion. Fraser shook her head. I realize that we're all shaken up by what happened today, but let's make an effort, shall we, Mr. Barclay? Andy nodded. Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry. Having drawn first blood, Fraser smiled. She turned back to her map, pointer at the ready. Napoleon's defeat boiled down to this. He was overconfident. He underestimated the enemy. And that is the cardinal sin in war, ladies and gentlemen. Never underestimate the enemy. Andy listened, thoughtful, upset. Andy heard taps sounding over the field, a mournful sound marking the end of a damned mournful day. Looking out the window of his room, he saw 2 cadets with trumpets, and 2 other cadets bringing down the flag. The sun was down below the hills, classes were over. Andy touched the glass. Is this worse than the foster homes or better? He didn't know. He went back to his bed and picked up the pocket knife Tyler had given him. He opened it and shut it, still upset, still disturbed. Whitehurst was spit-polishing dress shoes. Already they gleamed. Whitehurst looked up. Hey, better get unpacked, Barclay. Shelton loves to stage surprise inspections. Andy nodded. He closed the pocket knife and put it on his desk. He grabbed his duffel bag and started taking out the clothes he hadn't unpacked yet. What are you doing anyways? Andy said. Whitehurst shook his head. What's it look like I'm doing? I'm polishing Shelton's shoes. What? He makes you polish his damn shoes? Whitehurst laughed. No, I offered to do it out of the kindness of my heart. Geez, man. Andy watched Whitehurst spit on the tip of one shoe and then buffed the spot into a reflective gloss. Andy knew what was bothering him. He decided to mention it to Whitehurst. I need all the friends I can get, he thought, every single last one of them. Whitehurst, did you see Cochran with that doll today? Whitehurst looked up and squinted. No, a doll? What doll? Andy took a breath. He was carrying a good guy doll. Another breath. Just before the accident in the garbage truck? Whitehurst nodded and then went back to Shelton's shoes. Oh, good guys, I remember those. Yeah, me too. But nope, can't say I saw that. Cochran doesn't like the doll-playing type, Whitehurst said. Andy looked down at his clothes. He pushed the pile closer to the trunk at the foot of his bed. There, Whitehurst said. Andy looked over just in time to catch Whitehurst spitting inside one shoe, and then letting the fleamy goop drip from the heel down to the toe. The finishing touch for old Shelton. Andy grinned. Whitehurst stood up and grabbed his shaving kit. I'm going to get washed up, Barclay. Lights out in a few minutes. Right, Andy said. Whitehurst left the room. Andy turned to his duffel bag and took out some more clothes. Well, now, Chucky thought, sitting in the dark. Sounds like old Andy boy is all alone. Maybe he would like a little company. Chucky stood up. Inside Andy's big footlocker. I can smell it, Chucky thought. The smell of a stream of cadets with their smelly jock straps and dirty socks. That worries me. My senses are kicking in fast. The meter is running. Chucky pushed open the lid. He saw Andy sorting his clothes, tossing some in the bottom of his closet. Chucky pushed the lid open higher. It's almost reunion time, Andy boy. And won't he be glad to see me? Friends till the end. But then the door to the room opened. Chucky popped down into the blackness and heard the other kid, the porker, talking. Whitehurst came back, scratching his head. Yo, Barclay, geez, I almost forgot. Sergeant Clark wanted to know if you got your package. What package? He said that you got a package in the mail and that the little squirt Tyler was bringing it over to you. You didn't get it? Andy shook his head. A package? Who would send me a package? Who do I know that would send me a package? No, I didn't get anything. Whitehurst shrugged. Well, Clark wanted me to ask. Whitehurst started out the door again. You might want to check with Tyler, though. And Whitehurst was gone. That's strange, thought Andy. He grabbed his socks, scooping them up in both arms, and walked to his trunk. He crouched down and caught the lid of the trunk with his shoulder. Slowly, Andy started easing it up higher and higher, until he could flip it wide open. He looked inside. It was empty. Nothing left but the poor soul who passed through this room. Andy let his socks tumble. Then he grabbed his pants and shirts and put them in there too. I don't have much, he thought. My world, my life, has kinda shrunk lately. He slammed the lid of the trunk down and turned back to his desk. He stopped. The pocket knife had been there, right on top of the desk. It had been there and now it's not. Did Whitehurst take it? Thought Andy. Wouldn't that be a bummer? A kleptomaniac for a roommate. Or maybe it slipped to the floor. Maybe I'm losing my mind and I never even put it there. He patted his pants pocket, feeling nothing. Then Andy crouched down on the floor, looking under the desk and under the bed. He caught the flash of the blade out of the corner of his eye. The hand holding the blade, a tiny hand, malformed. The knife sliced out and cut his ankle. Andy screamed and rolled backward. He reached up to grab at the bed to stop his fall, but he grabbed the open duffel bag, pulling it to the floor. Some more clothes fell out, and his copy of Playboy. Andy smacked against the floor, and he looked straight ahead under his bunk and watched Chucky come out from the shadows, knife in hand, wearing that same sick smile that haunted Andy's dreams. No, Andy moaned. He grabbed at his ankle to stop the bleeding. No, no! Chucky stood up, pointing the blade right at him. Andy shook his head. I've gone crazy. This isn't real. This can't be real. Long time no see, pal. Looking good. No, Andy shook his head. You're dead. We killed you. Me and Kyle, we killed you. The doll, the madman, took another step toward Andy, the knife point leading the way. Well, you know what they say, buddy boy. You just can't keep a good guy down. Chucky shifted the blade to his other hand, then back again, enjoying Andy's terror. He's one sick doll, Andy thought. Then he saw Chucky's eyes move to the right, scanning the Playboy magazine. Chucky's eyes widened. My, how you've grown, Andy boy. Andy put up a hand, his back against the right wall. Only feet separated him from Chucky and his knife. Andy remembered something important. You're not gonna kill me. You need me. You need to transfer your soul into my body. But Chucky shook his head. Wrong again, wimp. I got some fresh meat lined up. and I'm not gonna let you spoil it. Not this time. Andy remembered something else. You got a package, Barkley. Whitehurst had said that. Andy whispered the name. Tyler. Chucky grinned, a disgusting leer. That's right. Just think, Andy. I'm gonna be your brother. Bitchin', eh? Now Chucky laughed, a weird cackle that was part witch, part demented electronic toy. Andy looked to his left. He saw one of Shelton's shoes sitting on Whitehurst's chair. Andy reached out and grabbed it. Without taking any time to aim, he tossed it at Chucky, hitting the doll right on the head, sending him flying backward. The knife tumbled to the floor, flying back and underneath the bed. The door opened. Andy looked at Chucky. He had quickly frozen into a doll. Just a harmless plastic doll. Andy looked up at the door. It was Shelton. He shook his head and walked into the room over to Chucky. Damn! Shelton reached down and picked up Chucky, so lifeless now. Barkley, what's the matter? You homesick? Shelton dangled the doll at him. You miss your mommy or something? Andy shook his head. No, jerk, you're holding a killer, a monster, he thought. But then Shelton looked down and saw his shoe. Hey, what's this, my shoe? Shelton picked it up. Even sitting on the floor, Andy could see that the tip of the shoe was badly scuffed. What the hell is this? Shelton pointed to the shoe. Andy stood up. He felt the thin cut, the crease of blood at his ankle. He hoped Shelton didn't notice. Crazy Andy Barkley, they would say. Now he's cutting himself. It wasn't Whitehurst's fault. Andy looked at Chucky. No, there's no way I can tell him. Oh yeah, the doll's alive. He wants to kill me. And all I had was your shoe. Andy put his hands out, pleading. I'm sorry about your shoe. It's my fault. It fell off the chair. I'll polish it. Just... Andy looked at Chucky. Just please, give me the doll back. Shelton sneered. You gotta be kidding. Andy shook his head. He licked his lips. Come on, it's a gift from my mother. Shelton laughed, a cruel sound. He waved the doll at Andy. Oh, Barkley, you're breaking my heart. You know that? He threw the shoe to Andy, and it crashed into Andy's gut. Shelton laughed. Tell Whitehurst he's off the hook. Tell the fat boy that I got myself a new slave. But... Andy nodded, eyes fixed on Chucky. Now clean up this mess. You have 5 demerits, pleb. But the doll! Shelton grinned. Hey, my kid's sister's birthday's coming up. I think she's gonna love it, don't you? Shelton turned and walked out of the room, the doll dragging behind him. Andy walked to the door and shut it. He turned around. It was over. Kyle and I ended it, but he's here now. Chucky's back. Andy took a breath. There's no end to it, no end. He looked at the mess of the room, the Playboy magazine, unnoticed by Shelton, the clothes scattered across the room. Andy licked his lips. Gotta think. I gotta be prepared. He thought, gotta find that knife, then I have to go get Tyler. I gotta get to him. He bent down and felt under his bunk. Andy touched the knife. Chapter 15. Whitehurst snored, a great rumbling noise that filled the room. The rest of the dorm was silent. Good, thought Andy. It's about that time. He slipped out of his bed. The floor was cold, and he heard the wind rustling the leaves of the oak trees outside. Andy reached down and opened his desk drawer. He removed the pocket knife. It felt small in his hands. Just a boy's toy. But he told himself the blade is sharp. It's sharp enough to do what I have to do. He walked to the door and turned the handle so slowly, not wanting it to squeak and wake Whitehurst. When it was turned all the way to the right, Andy pulled the door open and looked out. The corridor was dark except for an exit sign glowing at one end, near the stairwell. Andy took a breath and held it. He waited. There's nobody out there, he thought. All quiet on the western front. He stepped out into the hall, moving quickly down the corridor to the other end of the building. And as he walked, he opened the knife. The blade caught the scant light in the corridor. He walked to the upper-class barracks. The wind whistled outside, eager to get inside. Andy moved quickly, afraid that someone would get up to go to the bathroom. Yeah, and see me stalking around with a knife in my damn hand. That would do wonders for my reputation. He passed the exit sign and kept going. He looked at the doors as he passed them. He saw one marked Captain Ellis. He kept on walking. Then he saw a door with the words Major Shelton Private. Andy stopped. He looked up and down the hall. Crazy Andy Barkley wielding a knife outside Shelton's room. Yeah, great, that's all I need. Andy reached down and grabbed Shelton's doorknob. He turned it, but it stopped after only a quarter turn. Locked. Damn it. Leave it to Shelton to keep his room locked. Andy crouched down close to the lock. He brought the knife up and started to jiggle the blade in between the lock and the door. He felt a bit of metal and he jiggled the blade around some more. Nothing happened. Come on, he thought. Come on, open up. He twisted the blade around a bit, and then he moved it sharply up and down. He heard something catch. Leaving the knife in place, Andy reached up for the doorknob and twisted it, slowly, still worried about making a noise. The knob turned all the way. Andy pushed on it, and Shelton's door opened. It was black in Shelton's room, and it had a close, stuffy smell. As soon as Andy had the door open, he heard the sound of Shelton sleeping, a low rumbling. Good, thought Andy, he's asleep. He stepped into the room, but he kept the door open a crack. I don't want the door shut, he thought, not all the way. He heard the wind at Shelton's windows pushing against the glass, whistling through the quad. Another step, and Andy looked left and right, scanning the room. He held the knife out in front of him, looking for Chucky. I'll cut him to pieces, Andy thought. I'll slice that doll into so many small sections that it would take him an eternity to put himself back together this time. Andy took a step, but he saw nothing, just Shelton curled up on his bed, a blackish shape. He turned and saw the closet. He took a step closer to it, licking his lips. I'll have to be fast, he told himself. Get it open. Get the knife. Fast, fast. He grabbed the door to the closet, a larger piece of furniture than found in the regular dorm rooms. He pulled the door open fast, hurrying. His right hand held the knife, tense and ready to jab. The door flew open. Andy held it so it wouldn't bang against the closet. There was something there, big with glowing eyes, looking right back at him. Andy held his breath, nearly stepped back. His hand squeezed the knife, ready to lunge forward. The image in front of him mimicked his action. Just a mirror, Andy thought. It's just a damn mirror, and it's only my reflection. He opened up the other door slowly and carefully. The knife still there, wavering in front of him. Feeling so small now. With the door open, Andy saw Shelton's shirts and pants and uniform jackets pressed close together, hanging in the closet. So close together. Something could easily be hidden behind them, he thought. He nodded, knowing what he had to do. The wind whistled, shrieking at him. It was a cold night, and he heard the first spatters of rain against the windows. Andy reached out and parted the clothes, pushing one pile one way, the other pile the other way. He looked into the gloom, searching for a spot of red or blue or orange. Hidey-ho! But there was nothing. He pushed the clothes a bit more. He heard something move, something from above. From a shelf above the closet, something moved and fell down on him. A dark shape, round, spun toward him. Andy's first instinct was to back away from whatever was falling. That would be a good place to hide, he thought, real good. He could hide there and jump on me. But the shape caught the small amount of light, enough light so that Andy saw what it was. A helmet. Shelton's combat helmet. Andy reached out and caught it. He held it a moment, breathing heavily. He turned to look at Shelton. There was no movement, just the steady rumbling noise of him sleeping. And there's nothing in the closet, Andy thought. Where are you, Chucky? Where the hell are you? Come out and play. Come out so I can cut your plastic body into 1,000 pieces, 1,000,000 pieces, until... Andy started to turn. When he saw something on the floor of the closet, thrown there, out of place in this very orderly universe of Shelton's. Andy crouched down and picked it up. It was a sheath for a knife. A big sheath, for a big knife. It was empty. The knife was not in the sheath. Andy's heart thudded in his chest. He let the sheath slide to the floor. Andy turned to the bed to Shelton, wondering, is that Shelton there? Is he alone, or is there someone else with him? Shelton's blanket hung over the side of the bed, hiding whatever might be under Shelton's bunk. Andy took a step closer to it. Another step. The rain spatters grew heavier, until the rain made a steady crackling sound against the glass, joined by thunder. The wind whistled. Andy stopped by Shelton's bunk. He knelt down slowly, the knife ever in front of him. He thought of the sheath, how big it was. One hell of a knife in there, he thought. He knelt by the bunk. He grabbed the blanket flap and slowly, reluctantly, a sick feeling in his stomach, Andy raised it. But he thought, I'll have to bend down to see under the bed. And he remembered how fast Chucky was, how much like a real little kid he was, darting about, scurrying so fast. Andy crouched down and looked under the bed. His eyes peered into the blackness, the gloom. He waited, letting his eyes adjust to the darkness. He saw nothing. He nodded. Where is he? Where the hell is Chucky? Andy let the blanket flap fall and stood up. There was no place else to search, nowhere in the room for Chucky to... Then he saw Chucky. Andy's body went cold, an ice water tidal wave washing over him. He saw the doll. Now you don't see him, now you do. Sitting on the bed beside a sleeping Major Shelton, and Chucky had his knife, a giant Bowie knife, close to Shelton's neck. Chucky grinned. Andy's knife felt pathetic in his hands. He clenched his fist. Gotta do something, he thought. Have to do... Chucky whispered, almost singing. Then the doll mimed, dragging the blade across Shelton's throat. Andy heard some more thunder. Then, still in a whispery voice, Chucky said, That's not a knife. This is a knife. And my knife's bigger than yours. Sick thing. He's sick. 1,000,000 pieces. I'll make it so hard. Shelton snored. Chucky's voice dropped the childish singing tone. Now drop your knife, Andy, or I'll slice him open. Andy hesitated. I know what he'll do if I drop the knife, he thought. That's easy to guess. Chucky sneered at Andy, and then brought the cold metal of his blade closer to Shelton's throat. Do it! Andy looked down at the blanket hanging over the side. He looked around. The door was open, but the dorm was silent. It's just me and Chucky, he thought. Andy lowered the knife blade, bringing it down to his side. Chucky smiled, victorious. Andy felt the tip of the knife touch the blanket, hooking it. Andy pressed it against the hem of the blanket. He watched Chucky pull away his Bowie knife. I can guess what he'll do, thought Andy. You didn't have to be a rocket scientist to figure that out, no sir. The blade was stuck in the blanket edge. Andy took a breath. Chucky started to move away from Shelton. It's now or never, thought Andy, and he brought the knife up, dragging the blanket with it, flinging it over Chucky. The doll was entangled in the blanket. Then Andy jerked the whole bundle, pulling Chucky and the blanket off the bed, away from Shelton, who promptly woke up. What the fuck? Shelton shot up in bed to see Andy kneeling beside him holding a knife. Doesn't look too good, Andy thought, but Shelton, obviously trained to repel night attacks by enemy saboteurs and Viet Cong ninjas, quickly locked a hand around Andy's throat and propelled him against the wall. Andy smashed into the stone wall, his head whiplashing, just a bit, to create a clear smacking noise. Shelton rushed up to him, pinning Andy to the wall. He jabbed Andy in the gut just to make sure that Andy had no wind to explain himself. And all the while, Andy kept trying to watch the foot of the bed where the blankets had been tossed, along with Chucky and the knife. You picked one hell of a night to come out of the closet, Barkley. Andy shook his head. No! Hey, I'm not... Trying to catch his breath, Andy started to push away from the wall that Shelton seemed so intent on grinding into him. Shelton pushed him right back. I didn't want to, Shelton. I have to, sir. Andy looked at the dark pile by the bed. He saw Chucky emerge from the twisted blanket. Stop! Andy yelled. Again, Shelton pushed him against the wall. Shelton kept his hand locked on Andy's wrist. He gave it an expert twist, and Andy's knife tumbled to the floor. All Andy could do was watch Chucky hurry out of the room, holding his Bowie knife. "You're in big trouble, Barkley. You picked the lock, broke into my goddamn room. Big trouble. What the hell are you doing in here?" Chucky was gone. Shelton's hand admitted just enough air into Andy's windpipe so he could speak, barely. "You wouldn't believe me if I told you." Shelton nodded, thinking about what else he was gonna do, Andy guessed. And I bet he has lots of nifty ideas. Lots. Then Shelton turned away and looked around the room, his head snapping left and right, then back at Andy. "Hey, where the hell's the doll, Barkley? Where's the damn doll?" Andy opened his mouth, but he said nothing. "You took the damn doll. That's it, isn't it? You broke in here and took the goddamn doll." Well, at least he has the description correct, thought Andy. If ever there was a goddamn doll, Chucky is it. Andy shook his head. "You took the doll, didn't you?" "No," Andy croaked, his windpipe all but constricted. No, I... Then there was a noise in the corridor. Shelton's bellowing had obviously alerted the rest of the dorm that something interesting was going on. Ellis came into Shelton's room and threw the light switch. "Hey," Ellis said, "what's going on?" Shelton glowered, still considering his course of action. Other cadets came to the door. Shelton let his hand slip free of Andy and stepped back. "Somebody took the doll, Barkley." Shelton turned and looked at the cadets standing outside the room. The major raised his voice, and Andy saw a sick grin on his face. He has an idea. Major Moron has his idea. And that cannot be a good thing. Colonel Cochran shook his head. The rain was coming down in sheets. Thunder in the sky, streaming over the hoods of the cadets' ponchos as they jogged around the field. Over their heads, the cadets held their guns, which were growing heavier with each loop around the field. The cadets looked cold, wet, and miserable. Perhaps too miserable. Cochran was inclined to give Shelton his head. After all, he thought, it's not every year that I have such a capable company leader, a real military man. Shelton will go far. But this, well, it seemed a bit much. Cochran moved beside Shelton, just at the edge of the portico, shielding them from the rain and wind. "It's midnight, Major. Is this really necessary?" Shelton nodded and then turned to Cochran. "Yes, sir. I'm sure you agree that it's important that we weed out the thief. You yourself had said that we at Kent must subscribe to the strictest ethics, the highest degree of honor." "Yes, Shelton, but it's damn miserable out." Shelton nodded. "I'm trying to uphold the school's code of honor, sir." Shelton gestured at the soggy cadets of Bravo Company running through the grassy muck. "I'm trying to impress that upon the men." There was a flash of lightning in the sky. Far away, an ominous yellow jag cut through the night sky. It wouldn't do to have any of the cadets toasted by a bolt. Cochran looked at his watch. "All right, Shelton, make your point, but I want everyone inside at 0100 hours. Shelton saluted, crisp and military. A fine soldier, maybe a bit too hyper, but very military. "Yes, sir." Cochran turned and walked off the field, the wind at his back, the rain pelting him now that he was in the open. Shelton snorted at the air. Even old man Cochran, with all his medals, still needed someone to put some steel in his spine. He sometimes treats the company like school kids. That's a mistake that I won't make, Shelton thought. Shelton left the portico and walked out to Ellis, who was leading the company in the midnight march. "We have 1 hour. Let's make it count," Shelton said, smiling at Ellis. The rain streamed down his face into his mouth. It sure was horrible out. "Yes, sir," Ellis said, saluting and grinning. "By the time we're through, Barkley's gonna be public enemy number 1 around here. Bravo Company's gonna hate him." Ellis nodded, and then turned to the sad-looking group of cadets plowing through the mud. Shelton watched as he barked out the orders. "All right, ladies, move it! Get those guns in the air! Get those knees up! Hup, hup!" Shelton watched Ellis lead the company and force them to pick up the pace. He watched them splash in puddles, getting wetter. Oh boy, thought Shelton, are they ever gonna hate Mr. Barkley? Andy watched Whitehurst losing steam. The fat kid was still holding his gun over his head, but barely. With each plodding step, it wavered in the air, and Whitehurst's jog had slowed even more. His feet dragged through the wet muck. Then he heard Whitehurst say something. I think I'm gonna be sick. I really think I'm gonna be sick. Hang in there, Whitehurst. This can't go on for much longer. Andy was watching Whitehurst, watching the kid dying out here in the rain, so he didn't see another cadet run beside him. He also didn't see the cadet stick a foot out in front of him. Your history, asshole, he said. Andy turned and then he felt his foot catch. He went flying down, his gun tumbling through the air. His face fell into a mud puddle, and the gritty water splashed over him. The other cadets behind Andy made a point to step on his hand or give him a little kick as they went streaming by. A few stepped in the puddle, splattering him even more with the muddy water. They said things to him like, jerk, asshole, dead meat. Boy, I've assimilated nicely, Andy thought. But Whitehurst had stopped. He extended a hand to Andy. Come on, Barkley, get up. Most of the cadets had passed, and Andy's hand stung from being stepped on. Whitehurst grabbed a hand and yanked him up. It would be a lot easier for everybody if you just give Shelton the doll. Andy stood up. He tasted the mud on his lips. I don't have the doll, Whitehurst. Whitehurst shook his head. So what did it do, get up and walk away? Andy had to smile at that. Hey, you guessed right, he thought. Now if only someone would believe me. But then Ellis was there, screaming at them. What the hell do you think you're doing? Taking a coffee break? Get your asses in gear and move! Whitehurst just shrugged at Andy, and then turned to chase the cadets, now nearly halfway around the perimeter of the field. Andy looked at Ellis, one of Shelton's flunkies, like one of Der Fuhrer's henchmen, following orders, just happy to be one of the chosen leaders. I don't like that, thought Andy, and I may have to do something about it, but not now. He reached down for his gun and then started a slow jog, following Whitehurst, thinking, where's Chucky? Why is it, Chucky wondered, why is it that just when I'm about to solve my Andy problem, someone always pops up to save the little asshole? Why is that? Maybe old Andy has some powerful mojo working for him too. Chucky walked down the corridor. This is where the little cadets, the tiniest toy soldiers, sleep. He heard one cry out in the night, dreaming of home, of Mommy. Hey, this place isn't so bad. I had my Mommy, my crazy midget Mommy, with her booze and her strap, always screaming at me, pushing me around, ranting at me about the big people, how she hated the big people. Gee, Mom, you should see me now. You'd just love it. Chucky kept moving down the dark corridor. Good thing there's a room list posted out in this vestibule. Very handy. 'Cause now I know where everyone sleeps. He shifted the knife to his other hand. It was big and heavy. More of a machete for him, really. He wondered how Andy was faring, explaining things to the thoughtful officers in his dorm. Now that's funny. Poor Andy, always babbling about his doll. Chucky counted off the rooms. 1, 2, 3, and 4. This is it. He stopped and looked down the corridor. Nobody here but us ghosts, he thought. Chucky pushed open the door. He saw 2 bunks. 2 bunks, 2 brats. Just have to pick the right rugrat. He moved close to one bunk. Chucky looked at the kid's blonde hair. Nope, that's Parker, Tyler's roommate. Chucky squeezed his Bowie knife. He moved to the other bunk. It's soul swapping time. He saw Tyler buried under his blanket. Chucky climbed onto the bunk and grabbed the blanket. Then he yanked it back fast to reveal 2 pillows and a note sitting on the top pillow, written by a kid with lousy penmanship, Chucky noted. He had to hold the note close to read it. It was so dark in there. What the fuck is this? Thought Chucky. He read the note. Dear Charles, you're it. Come and find me. Your friend, Tyler. Chucky crumpled the note and tossed it to the floor. God damn it, he said. He hopped off the bed. He looked around the room. There was no place to hide in here. Chucky nodded and left the room. Chucky moved down the corridor. He passed other rooms, the doors closed. The kid wouldn't hide in there, he thought. Nah, he'd wake up other kids and get in trouble. No, he's somewhere else. The doll saw doors at the end of the corridor. He's probably down there. Cute kid. Hope he likes having plastic hands. And Chucky had a neat thought. Yeah, wouldn't it be cool if we swap? No, when we swap bodies. And then Andy comes along, old Andy to the rescue. And he sees Tyler. And I scream, 'cause I'd be Tyler. I scream, help me, Andy. Chucky's gonna get me. And before the kid has a chance to say anything, old Andy boy hops on him and cuts him to ribbons. Wouldn't that be great? He kept walking down the corridor when he heard a sound, a small voice singing from way back at the other end. Oh, Charles! Chucky spun around, but he saw nothing. He ran down the corridor listening, but he heard nothing, saw nothing. Hide and seek. It's too goddamn late to be playing hide and fucking seek. The damn kid should know better. Now he's getting me real mad. Then he saw him at the end of the hall, turning the corner, down to the other wing, housing the administration building. And Tyler sang out again. Come and find me! Chucky heard giggles. God damn it, he said, and Chucky ran as fast as his little bandy legs would carry him. He pulled the Bowie knife out of his good guy overalls, with so many handy pockets. He held the knife tightly, thinking, every game ends, and this one will too. Okay/aholics. This has been chapters 14 and 15 of Child's Play 3, the novelization by Matthew J. Costello. Gotta say, I really enjoyed seeing Andy in an actual classroom. You didn't see that a lot in the movie, and it was kind of cool that the teacher was kind of foreshadowing the end of the book, talking about warfare and everything, and thought that was kind of a cool little foreshadow, and it got us in Andy's head while he's having to sit in class. And then, of course, we get the scene where, Whitehurst is sitting there shining up Shelton's shoes. And as soon as Whitehurst leaves the room, Chucky attacks Andy. And I thought the book played out that scene so much better, that reunion between the two of them. The shock, that Andy's feeling by seeing Chucky there. And just the humor that Chucky is getting out of this. Seeing Andy grown up with a playboy. There had to be like a little ounce of pride in Chucky right there. Before he was going to kill him. It's funny that, Chucky's acting like he's going to kill Andy, and then Chucky gets taken out by a damn shoe. Then Shelton comes in. At that point, why didn't Andy just pick up the knife, stab Chucky over and over to make him scream? To prove to Shelton that the doll was alive? I digress. It would have ruined the rest of the story, I guess. But, so Shelton takes the doll, hides it in his room, gonna give it to his kid sister, and we get another very suspenseful scene that I think played out a lot more suspenseful in the book than the movie, and that is Andy looking for Chucky in Shelton's room. I thought that whole scene played out so much better in the book, so much more suspenseful, And then when Shelton catches Andy and pins him against the wall, punches him and chokes him, it seemed a lot more brutal and intense in the book than the movie. So I did enjoy those two scenes for having that extra intensity that only a novelization can bring, because it puts us in their head and it draws out the scene more than a movie can. Not a whole lot to say about whenever they're outside marching in circles and stuff. I mean, what did Shelton think he did with the doll, honestly? The doll wasn't there. Andy was there, so did Andy go? Does he think Andy ditched the doll and came back to kill him with the knife? Or, what? It was kind of cool to see how the rest of the people had turned on Andy completely, tripping him, calling him names, Whitehurst, trying to be his only friend. And then we get Chucky, sitting there thinking to himself, and he starts thinking about his dwarf mom from the backstory we got in Child's Play 2, the novelization. I thought that was a really cool throwback to the other book, since the movie didn't cover that at all. So yeah, cool throwback to Child's Play 2, the novelization about Chucky's dwarf mother. That makes me think that there was something in the script for Child's Play 2 or 3 that was gonna, mention that or something. Either that or this author is just really wanting that to be canon. So he was just driving it home in the two novelizations he got to write. And so yeah, that's where we're at. Chucky found the note. Tyler's hiding from him. It makes me wonder if in the next upload, if Cochran is going to have the same death he has in the movie. Having the heart attack, and Chucky's just like, you gotta be fucking kidding me. Or it could do what some novelizations do and change it up on us. So we'll see. I'll be back very soon with more of Child's Play 3. Until then, this has been your friendly neighborhood 80s slasher librarian saying, okay, boils and ghouls, thanks for listening. Pleasant dreams. And I'll see